Hi, I'm Al Gore with the Climate Reality Project, and this is 24 hours of reality on the ground here at COP28. The old cliche is good news and bad news, and I guess the good news is there were some positive developments on the first day of the COP with the quick and formal establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund. That's something that's been needed for a long time, and some people worried that was going to be the subject of a divisive debate throughout the negotiations, but that was established. On the other hand, there's been fair criticism of the meager pledges made to put money into that fund. They're very insufficient, not even close to what is needed. It's good to have the fund, good to have some pledges, but to put it in context, the total amount of money pledged by all the countries who said they'll put money into the Loss and Damage Fund amounts to about 49 minutes worth of the annual fossil fuel subsidies. Even if you only look at the direct taxpayer subsidies to fossil fuels, it still only amounts to about 4.5 hours worth of the annual yearly subsidies for fossil fuels. So, you know, it's just, it's kind of a, I won't say it's a distraction, but it's something that we should understand and put in context. It's a good thing if they follow through, but it's not sufficient in any way, not even close. And there's also, from the very start of this COP28, all through to when we get to the final day, there is this clear conflict of interest that exists because the CEO of one of the largest and least responsible oil and gas companies in the world was named the president of this COP. That's a conflict of interest because the president of the COP is supposed to focus on every possible way to get the world to reduce the emissions from burning fossil fuels. And yet his day job, which is way more important to him than the position as president of the COP, has him obligated to promote more fossil fuels. And we just learned that his staff has been feeding him memos for the meetings he has around the world with leaders about the COP28 and encouraging him to ask questions about how they can buy more oil and gas from the company that he heads. And the investigative journalists that uncovered this with help from whistleblowers inside that company have confirmed, they say, that in at least some of those meetings, he actually did use the occasion set up to talk about COP28 as an opportunity to sell more fossil fuels. And we've learned also that this company, ADNOC, Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, has a massive plan to expand its production of oil and gas starting immediately after the end of COP28. You know, it's just like, that's outrageous, I think. Now, another bit of positive news in these early days is that 51 of the world's oil companies publicly signed up to the so-called oil and gas decarbonization charter, pledging to cut their methane emissions by 2030. But again, if you look more closely at it and you examine the list of countries with the highest methane emissions from oil and gas, half of the top 10 are not even represented in that pledge. And some of those have the biggest methane emissions. And 2 years ago at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, there was a big methane pledge then, too. And in the years since then, the methane emissions have gone up. So a voluntary system where they monitor themselves that just addresses a fraction of the problem and may not involve really determined follow through. It's just a voluntary pledge. That is of concern to me. So to sum up, while there's been some progress this week, there is so much more we need to do to ensure that this COP meets this historic moment and really addresses the climate crisis with the seriousness and at the speed and with the scale that is absolutely necessary. We're running out of time on this crisis, and we've got to get real serious about it. What I'm hoping to see was summed up brilliantly and eloquently by the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, who on the opening day said very clearly to the entire conference, we have to stop burning fossil fuels, period. Not just reduce them slowly, not just pretend to abate them with this carbon capture and direct air capture, which is kind of a research project in terms of it not being commercially practical. Now they use it as a bright, shiny object to convince people that, oh, we're going to be fine. We can keep burning fossil fuels because we're just going to catch all the emissions when we burn them. It's, you know, at the present state of the technology, that's ridiculous. And by the way, they've used this for 50 years and the cost hasn't come down at all. And so it's really just a distraction. But back to the Secretary General's speech, he said, don't pretend about the abatement in carbon capture. Don't phase down, phase out. In order to solve the climate crisis, we have to understand the climate crisis is a fossil fuel crisis. And the solution to the climate crisis is to phase out fossil fuels. It's just that simple. Now, we also need agreement on phasing out the subsidies for fossil fuels. All around the world, the taxpayers are forced by their governments to artificially subsidize the destruction of humanity's future by giving money to encourage more and more fossil fuel use. That's ridiculous. It's really got to stop. If governments really want to find more money to devote to solutions to the climate crisis, they can start by just stopping the use of taxpayers' money in ways that enable the oil and gas companies to keep on burning the fossil fuels that are causing this problem in the first place. So it's very straightforward. We need to ramp up use of renewables and clean energy and sustainability, and we need to phase out all fossil fuels and fossil fuel subsidies, and we have to do it quickly. Scientists have been telling us for a long time already that in order to avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis, we've got to work toward what they call true net zero, no net additions to the heat-trapping gases that we put into the atmosphere, and we have to do it without any further delay. It's very important for people to continue to use their voices and their votes at election time and their choices in life, and tell their leaders at the local, regional, state, national level, tell those leaders to get busy and take more meaningful action quickly to phase out fossil fuels. Stop the subsidies that are now propping up the fossil fuel industry. And instead, speed up the deployment of solar and wind and batteries and electric vehicles and regenerative agriculture. They work. They're cheaper. They're cleaner. They create more jobs. It's a really clear choice. And right now, we're at a tipping point, and we need more and more people to stand up and speak out boldly and persuasively. While this COP is going to have a record number of fossil fuel lobbyists, I'm encouraged that this year we have nearly 300 climate reality leaders here in Dubai fighting for positive change. Our goal is to increase that number of climate reality leaders who are advocating for the health and future of our planet to the point where they outnumber all of the fossil fuel lobbyists who are working hard to just build more profits for the big polluting fossil fuel companies. So for those of you who are watching this, wherever you are, I urge you to tell your leaders they need to end fossil fuel subsidies that are propping up the oil and gas industry worldwide. You can take action by clicking on the link on the screen here today, and we'll connect you to how you can take meaningful action. And finally, in conclusion, let me say this. If you ever doubt that we as human beings have the political will to do this, never forget that political will is itself a renewable resource. Thank you.